Welcome to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm Dr. Kristin, an integrative holistic family physician, author of Life After Lyme, and host in this virtual space of learning, healing, and growing. I believe humans are like trees, and our physical limb is only one of many. Health on all limbs of the tree, emotional, conceptual, social, spiritual, is absolutely required for the whole tree that is you to be vibrantly well. I created the Healing Grove podcast as a place to showcase some of the world's best integrative and holistic medicine, to expose you to transformative tools and mindset shifts for all limbs of your tree. I hope you enjoy our conversation in the Healing Grove today as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome to a very special interview with my dear friends Matt and Carol Newell. Hi Matt, hi Carol. Wave so everyone can see who you are. These are two fabulous humans who I met maybe 7 years ago in my quest to start my own practice in a wellness center. I had a minor detour when someone told me that these were people I couldn't ignore, and I went to meet them, and indeed it was so important that I go work with them that I stopped my plans to build a wellness center, and I slowed my own practice down, and I went to work with them an hour from my home because they are that special and they've got an important message. And hugely important tools that I think everybody with a brain needs to hear about. So I'm glad that all of you are here. I see that you all have brains and you've all showed up to learn what you could do to maximize them. But before we get into that, I would love to have them introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about your journey, Matt and Carol.
Okay. So I started in this field way back, fresh out of college, going to college and learning about early childhood education. I had always had a passion to work with children with special needs and children who were challenged because I had a cousin who was born prematurely. Back then, when a baby was born prematurely, they were put in an incubator, given 100% oxygen, which they found out was not such a good idea. It caused her to not only have the neurological challenges that she had, but she was blind as well. And she was very special to me, and that was kind of started my journey, always wanting to work with children. So one of the things that I realized though very early on was it's really important, if I was going to understand about the brain and how the brain functions, to first study how it functions with a well child, typically well child or neurological typical, as we often call them today, to just see how do they progress and how should we develop. So I started my work with children who were they had different challenges. I worked with children who had a background of trauma, and from supporting families, and also through that realized that if you're going to work on the brain and heal a child's brain, it's very important that you're working with the whole family and you're working with the mothers and the fathers as well, that we're a family unit and the caregivers need just as much help and support as do the children for their development to go well. So early on, I started working with the children and with their parents, and realizing how important that whole family unit was. So that's kind of how I started in this, and branched out after a few years of working with children who were typically neurotypical with different challenging backgrounds because of where they were born and their family situation. Always gravitated to the children who were the most hurt though neurologically, that had seizures or had developmental delays or had challenges, and worked with those parents and those families. So that was my passion, and went and studied over the years, studied more and more about how the brain works and how it should work, and different things that you can do, and the attitude amongst us professionals was often, these children you care for, you keep them happy, you help them to just be content. A lot of the time you put them away. You don't necessarily, you encourage parents to put them in a facility that will do the caring for them, and let the parents bring up their other children and be a family has one child that doesn't live with them, but that did not sit well with me, and did not sit well, I realized, with most parents, and how important it was to find ways to support the family, for the family to stay together and support each other. And the healing comes within the family when you can work together with them. So the brain's important. We can talk more about that as we go through this evening, and how important the brain is, but also that family unit needs to get the support and guidance, which is really about why we started the Family Hope Center. Matthew and I worked together and met working together in a facility where the brain was the focus, and the family to some degree, but not to the degree that we wanted. And so that's why we started the Family Hope Center. So Matthew, I'll let you can add your part of the story, and then
you can say what you do at the Family Hope Center.
No, I was going to let you do that.
You talk about how you help reading, and kids with deaf,
Okay.
and kids who are struggling with social. You've got a lot more to say.
You want me to keep going? Keep going. Okay. So my background, as I said, was early childhood education. So education and teaching was how I started, and so over the years, I have developed different systems and plans to help and support the social development of the child, and help and support their development in learning and reading. And we can work on a lot of strategies, and me and my team work on strategies to help parents and support them. They certainly need strategies, but strategies don't work if you're not looking at the brain, and if you don't have the support of what's going on. So if we don't have the support of what Dr. Kristin does to help with the diet and the nutrition and the physiology of the child, forget trying to change the way the child's going to learn. That doesn't work. We have to have the whole package together, which was why it was so important for us to have experts like Dr. Kristin joining our team, and people who look at the children's structure, people who look at what do we do to help the child to learn when their brain's not working well? How do we frame things? How do we scaffold things for learning to be more successful? And as Matthew will talk about, the physical component, being able to have all of those components help make my job easy compared to what it used to be like. I remember very early on, one of my first jobs, and really trying to care for the children that were under my care. And it was a facility where the children lived, and we had a couple of children who didn't eat very well and were pretty immobile. And, I went to the school and thought, okay, I'm going to learn something by going to the school with these children. I'll learn about the different therapies that are used to help the child. And I said, was really struggling with this child eating and swallowing and drinking. What do you do to help the child? Well, we just do this. Like, that's it. I mean, you went to college and you learned how to develop children, and that was all that this person could give me as the teacher and the caregiver for the child during the day. And I thought, wow, that's not enough. That was enough to make me say, I've got to learn a lot more, because just touching a child and stroking their cheek cannot be the answer to getting a child to eat better and swallow better and chew better. There has to be more than just a little touch on the cheek. And so that has always kind of sat with me. Those kinds of comments make me feel, okay, there's a lot more to healing and helping and guiding and supporting children than just giving them a little bit of rub on the cheek. So I work now with children who struggle with eating. The mobility part is very important. As I said, the physiology is very important, and there's a lot of sensory issues when it comes to eating and chewing and swallowing, and those things we address as well for the children. So I work on the sensory side of the children, and we also see children who don't see, and they have what we call cortical visual impairment. They don't see well. So I have a system in place that helps gradually to stimulate the visual pathway so a child can learn to see black and white, learn to see color, learn to see lights. And over time, with the right neurological support and the right physiological support, because a lot of those children will often have had some kind of traumatic injury and they're on a lot of medication. And as we wean them off of medication and we give them the right kind of neurological support, they can go from not being able to see at all to being able to be smiling at their mom and dad's faces within sometimes as short as 6 months. Often it's a 2-year process, and but it's well worth every bit of it when if you have a child who can't smile at you when they first smile at your smile, that's precious. So
awesome, Carol. Before
Yeah.
Matt takes over, I just want to put a little pin in that in case you like yawned and zoned out for 2 seconds. Kids who used to be blind, who aren't blind anymore. Like, this is one of the reasons I had to go work for these people.
In fact, the little boy I saw today was traumatically brain injured at birth. And he had to take a skull out and kind of re-sew it up again. And he was blind, and he had 40 to 50 seizures a day, completely paralyzed. Well, he crawled 4 yards today on his belly across the floor in less than 60 seconds. And he read single word the pictures, like, what's this picture? You got these 3 words. Which one of these matches this picture? And he read beautifully. He says 5 words now. He's getting smart and he's joyful. And it just to watch the parents transform. And then the child transforms. Watching people become like their own hero to themselves, it's very cool. You know, and they become informed and they're not like panicking all day. And they're just, you know, they're thrilled with the joy. So yeah, exactly, put a pin in. It seems crazy, but deaf kids, you can get a deaf kid to hear. If you get that ping, that evoked potential, you're in the hunt. And yeah, it's a great way to support parents. Yeah.
So Matt, tell us your story. What brought you to this world?
My mother and father, you know, I'm a twin, identical. Number 8 out of 11, 6 brothers and 4 sisters. So that was a Irish Catholic fiasco in our neighborhood. We played all day, served newspapers, played all day, went to school, and played sports until we couldn't see anything. And grew up in a great home with a lot of great ideas. And my mother was a professional artist, started when she was about 40 years old. And she was the first one on the block that says we should eat brown bread and we should not drink milk too much and we should, you know, eat a little healthy. So we all thought my mother was a little bit, you know, crazy back then. And my mother had heart surgery and nearly passed away when I was young. And I remember she finally came home one day and she called me up to her room, and I was playing baseball outside with my brothers. And interrupting me from baseball was like crazy, like you just don't do that. So anyway, my mother invites me up to her room and she says, here, take this book. I don't want you to read it. I think I might have been like 8 or 9 years old. She hands me this book. I think it was in 4th grade. And she said, come back to me in a week. And I looked at the book and it was all about reflexology. So I had to come back a week. I give her the book. She says, she pulls up the blanket and she says, all right, start massaging my feet. Then what the heck is this? Why am I the guy that does it? But I know that I was fascinated by the way things were working. And I didn't have enough prejudice to disbelieve things at that age. It just seemed completely logical to me that you would go to the source. And fast forward, I went to college. I was a college wrestler, wrestled in high school and college, played ton of sports, wanted to be exercise physiologist, decided that was too boring. It was all in the lab. Then I went for exercise science, decided that was not. I started working part-time in the university clinic, helping people with brain injuries, and became fascinated that, you know what, this is really, really intense. I want to be part of this. So I started working for an organization that's with Carol. My first job was to run a school of 25 brain injured young adults and get them up in the morning at 5:30 every morning and run 5K, come back, eat dinner with perfect dining etiquette, teach them how to be like Emily Post. And because they were just shoveling their food and, you know, no regard for proper manners. So I had to give them proper manners. And then we would do a physical program that would last about 2.5 hours. It was intense. And this was all to go to the central nervous system from the bottom up, inside out, not top down. And then we'd eat a perfect lunch. And then I would teach them reading, writing, arithmetic in the afternoon. And then at the end of the day, I would teach them how to make their bed and organize their room. And then we would have dinner, and then we would practice some social skill like ballroom dancing or going out to a cocktail party, what we'd say, or going out to dinner. So I had to teach them and break down all these social skills. And I did that for about 7 years. Meanwhile, we built a wilderness facility out in the middle of the woods and raised bees and built a house together. And my whole idea in running the school was to change the neurological outcome of brain injury young adults, which everybody had thought, the game is over, you're just going to teach this person a social skill. What I saw in my bones, that the brain grows by use, kids get better, intention is important, why you do the things you do, then you start paying attention to doing it and executing on a consistent basis. And I saw incredibly, hey, we ran 26-mile marathons with 31 brain injured young adults, 7-minute miles, 8-minute miles, 9-minute miles. Carol trained a guy who was functionally blind and hemiplegic and finished a 26-mile marathon. That changed that young man's life. It also grew his cortex, where seizures come from, which reduced his seizure activity, turned on his vision, and we saw a lot of social and intellectual and physiological and life changes. So having done that, and then I ran the clinic, the international clinic where I worked for 10 years, and just ended up, frustrated. I wanted to get into more things that could create more change, and was frustrated that I wasn't smart enough, frustrated that I wasn't getting the results that we needed to get. It wasn't the family's fault, it wasn't God's fault, it wasn't the kids' fault. It was, do I get this system well enough that I can really coach these families? And it was an incredible amount of frustration. Joy that you're doing what you're doing, but frustration that you're falling short and there's something out there that I don't know. And I like to be perfect, in this regard, in terms of I wish I knew everything I needed to know to help that child 100%. And when I don't, I feel like, oh my gosh, which drove me into training and studying, becoming qualified in craniosacral work and myofascial release and advanced chiropractic work and reconnective healing and UN mastery and all kinds of other things. Chinese medicine, a technique called Bowo acupuncture. I studied that, was certified on that. So along the way, body talk and the 14 levels of body talk, along the way, just trying to understand just this system, and it works in multiple different ways. And putting it together and doing the craniosacral work, or tapping in from an active memory from the past, and clearing that, and then clearing up, making sure the liver is happy with the visual pathway and the gallbladder is happy. That's going to change tightness in the body through the mesencephalon. And then we get Kristin's work, which I couldn't wait to hire Kristin. I like to surround myself with people a ton smarter than me, and she's like right up that place. So I gotta have it. Like, okay, she goes, how much? I said, what do you need to come to the Family Yoga Center? And she's traveled around the world to Australia with me and England with us, and just the conversations we had around the dinner table and the breakfast table and the lunch table, and while we're on trying to have a social trip, we're just talking about the brain, the kid, the brain, the family, kid. So it's been a really great experience. And so Carol and I started Family Hope Center almost 20 years ago, and we've been in 6 continents, 34 countries. We believe that the brain can heal. The function determines structure. The more I stimulate something, the more it's going to grow. It's not a fait accompli. You can change the brain at any time at a child's level or a person's level, whether they're a 62-year-old patient who had a stroke or an 82-year-old former pastor who comes in the door and he doesn't know his wife any longer, and his wife is pleading with you to see if you could capture some of that memory back. And you evaluate and deliver something that 3 months later, she writes a letter and says, my husband just came back to me this week. And the good news is it's not rocket science. You don't really have to have like a PhD, you just have to have an ability to say, to agree that the brain grows by years. It doesn't matter. But if you have a plan and you execute that plan and you're consistent and you surround them with good physiology, like some craniosacral work and some great work that Chris is doing with the nutrition and the homeopathy and a biomat and hyperbarics and some Chinese medicine techniques and some herbs, and you detoxify the pathway, and then you grow the pathway in recognition of the child's level of physiological strength. You wait until they get stronger, and then you load the hard drive. And you include as many people that love that child, you're going to win. You're absolutely going to win. And then for those people that keep score, and we keep score, we have, to our knowledge, the best results in the world, 250 to 300% progress in autism, ADD, ADHD, developmental delay, traumatic brain injury, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. And so measured through the WeFIM, which is the largest pediatric tool that measures outcomes that exists in the world today. It's been since 1984 and sanctioned by the United States government and 7 other departments of the government. We've been keeping score for 18 years, over 2,000 children. Probably 54% are developmental delay, another 25% on spectrum. 22, 23% are diagnosed with cerebral palsy, super tight, and some of the trach and tube, and blind, deaf, paralyzed, epileptic. And then the next is just going to be the traumatic brain injury, the car accident, or Down syndrome. So that makes it, you know, a really diverse population. But because you're dealing with the brain, you don't have to become an expert in cerebral palsy. You have to become informed what you're looking at. Where part of the brain is most compromised, and of course we map that. And we're mapping that with a tool that we believe to be the most robust tool that exists in terms of mapping the medulla oblongata, the ponte, the midbrain, which includes the basal ganglia and the thalamus and the mesencephalon, the cortex, and the limbic brain, which runs through your sense of smell and runs 40% of your brain. So how you smell is how you're going to be socially integrated. How you smell is how you're going to eat good food. How you smell is how you're going to be socially regulating. So we have those 5 chunks of brain that we want to measure over 7 fields of functionality. So you have your visual pathway, you have your auditory pathway, you have your tactile pathway, you have your olfactory pathway, again, 40% of your brain. Then you have your motor pathway, which means crawling on your belly, creeping on your hands and knees, running. And then you have manual function. And then you have the ability to talk. So that's 7 different functions that a human being has to have over 5 chunks of brain. How do you measure that and give a person a neurological age? And then divide by the chronological age to come up with the degree of functionality. And then where do you put your flags so that you know where to start? And so what we have been teaching parents, we have been putting together is this chart, which we're in the process of being published on. Where exactly is the injury which is manifesting in the child's inability to talk with couplets, or to understand 4-step requests, or having seizures, or can't focus, or touches everybody, can't keep his hands off, can't stop biting himself. He can't regulate, can't upregulate. He's urinating in his bed at night. He can't read. His eyes are crossing over. They can't track. Where's all this coming from? And if you can tag the area of the brain it's coming from, and you know the extent and degree where it's injured, then you can know where you put your time. And then every 6 months, we see families, they come from all over the world. We do half our appointments virtual now because of COVID. But before that, we were in 6 continents and saw families in 34 different countries. And everybody's really the same. Everybody's got a kid they adore. Everybody's confused. Everybody's frustrated. Some people are just so disempowered, they can't even breathe anymore. They just can't breathe. They come into the parent training and they're barely breathing, but they have just enough hope to get through a 3-day parent training and say, okay, look, I'm not giving up here, but please, you got to tell me straight out what is going on and how do I heal that? Can I be involved? And am I, in fact, qualified to be involved? Because I'm just a mother. What do I know? But they've been pounded by the professionals that they're just not really the right stuff. And so what we've been able to do is surround ourselves with really smart people and be able to teach parents that it's a bottom-up, inside-out therapeutic approach, that the family can be the center. You can bring anybody along for the ride you want. We need to be unified. We need to all know what we're looking at, because here's the child's brain, here's the child. They could be in 2 separate places. You have this child who you think is awesome, but does all kinds of crazy stuff. Meanwhile, throughout this whole process, Carol and I have 3 kids. The first one was born really well, and we knew what to do to help them just move through the neurological pathways. One of them is crawling on your belly. Few people have their children crawling on their belly and pushing off their toes. But who would know it integrates 11 primary reflexes in the brain, like the Babinski and the tendon guard and the Galan and the Perez and the head riding and the TNR, Who would know that without belly crawling, you're not going to organize your structure, organize the ability to self-regulate, organize tracking, organize controlling your mouth and sucking and swallowing, organize arousal so you don't have seizures. I mean, who would know that if you crawled on your belly as a baby, that you would neurologically be super ability to focus and filter and not be distracted in class and not be hyperactive? And in fact, when we get a 10 and 11-year-old with their hair on fire, coming in the clinic, taking things apart and can't focus, we just put them back down on the floor. We put them back down and we take them back to the past. And we say, okay, you're going to go back to the future. We have figured out, based on your function, that you have these neurological complications in this chunk of brain. And we're going to retrace those chunks. We're going to grow those pathways because you never, for whatever particular reason, vaccination, car accident, too late in the uterus, or you just put on your back all day in your orphanage. We're going to retrace those steps. Well, our second child, who was 3 months old, got a vaccination shot and became hemiplegic. She was the brightest, cheeriest little kid, moving all around. 3 months old, this kid could scurry around the house with her stomach like this. And she was smiling and happy and sleeping. Excellent. Neurologically tight kid. Became a hemiplegic, and it took us about 12 years to heal her brain. She didn't have the foggiest idea how to read at 7 or 8 years old. And Carol was one of the greatest reading teachers. And her brain got really, really unhappy with that vaccination shot. It happened within 24 hours. I'm holding her. She becomes brain injured in my hands. And talking was complicated for her. She was apraxic. She had every single thing going on, and we just kept looking at the brain and not making sure that she realized that she was loved and that her brain was perfect, and we were just going to move through it and we're going to help her get organized. And she became, well, and she became a hemiplegic child, became a concert violinist and a national gymnast, and she graduated with honors with a doctorate in occupational therapy and has her own child now, and I'm just happy for her. But it wasn't easy. Nope. And there were times that I was scratching my head and going, I'm missing something, I'm missing something, I'm missing something. And then our third child, which is our second daughter, we adopted her when she was a baby, and she came to us really, really hurt and had an alcoholic brain. And she didn't cry for grief until she was about 14. She was cried all the time, lied, cheated, stole, just belligerent, badly behaved. 1 minute, unbelievably charming and loving and kind, and the next minute doing things you're like, why'd you do that? I don't know. So we have lots of kids. If you say, why'd you do that? They go, I don't know. And the parents are like, no, you must know. The fact is, the kid doesn't know. And so it took us a long time to heal her brain. We had to homeschool her for a long period of time because she couldn't survive in a classroom. We were home, reorganized, get it all done. But along the way, like most of us, we learn on our knees. We're desperate, but we want to still stay inside out, bottom up, organic. Let's get to the root. Let's get to the root. We haven't bottomed out yet. You got to go down and find out. Well, okay. And as Carol said, sometimes you have strategies, but in the meantime, you're looking to heal it. And so that's what Carol and I have been doing. So Mary became graduated college when the third grade teacher gave me an IEP and said, your daughter will never have a higher level of reading than third grade, and you should just get over it, Mr. Newell. You should just grow up. And if you have expectations above that, you are an unrealistic father, and you're doing a great disservice to this child. Rubbish. It's not true. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to me. I mean, I knew it, but I'm like, am I going to argue with this person, or am I going to just tell her, just bring your homework home. Just put the homework in her book back, please. Bring it home so I can do it, and I'll give it back to you the next day. So it became necessary for us to homeschool because there was so much out there. And of course, this relates to all of our kids that we have on the clinic. We have lots and lots of kids who are super, super smart, but totally disorganized. And so that's what we do at the Family Hope Center. We're all about empowering parents, teaching them about the brain, having mastered, like, what does this system do? It's like gravity, it's like electricity. It has principles in play. And how can you be involved? How can you be informed so that every day you wake up proactive as opposed to reactive? Because there's a lot of parents go to bed exhausted at night, and they either don't remember what they did or realize they don't have enough time, and they put out fires all day long. All day long, put out this fire, put out that fire. And I said, I would like to get 5 minutes ahead of that fire. That's just a 10-minute shift. you know, what you're doing and why you're doing it. So we've been blessed to work for parents, work for them and work with them, and we're pretty relentless in terms of our desire to get brighter and brighter and more informed, and we're constantly sharpening each other and saying, you know, let's go, this child's here, what do we need? And then when we take something sophisticated, we want to reverse engineer, put it in language that people can understand it, empower them, and then come alongside them every month and listen to the questions and help them and rewrite it and keep updating. And every 6 months we see parents again and we update their programs. And yeah, that's what we've been doing for about 18 years now. And it's been quick. All of a sudden, it's 20 years later, I still feel like I'm 45 when I started. I cannot believe it's clear 20 years later. We have a lot more to accomplish, right, Carol? Not done yet. So that's kind of how I am. I ran with my kids every day when my children were hurt. I crawled with them on their belly to reorganize the palms. I crept with them on the hands and knees to jack up the midbrain and the thalamus. I ran with every morning to organize your cortex for about 15 years. Every morning, me and the kids were outside running 5K because it grows your cortex and organizes your brainwaves. So there was always a reason why. At one point, I ran the largest triathlon for children that exists in the world today for about 17 years. It was a 1/4 mile swim, 10K bike, and a 5K run. The youngest was 4.5 years old. Finished it in an hour and 23 minutes. And that was all to grow the respiratory pathways and to grow the neurological pathways of the kids and have a blast doing it. And it was all parent driven. So I got to coach a lot of parents to do kind of really crazy things that they didn't think they could do, but have a lot of fun. Joy has to be the center of this. The kind of joy that's deep inside your soul, that you know why you're doing things you're doing, and you're not blaming anybody, and you get up every day exactly knowing what you're going to do. You're not perfect, but you know the pathway. And if you follow it, you're going to get to a yes at some point.
You guys can see why I needed to work with this team, right? I mean, you may have to rewind and play some of that back because it was really rapid fire and we crammed about like 2 days worth of our 3-day conference, or at least the introductory pieces that you needed to hear. But I want to leave some time for questions because you probably have some. And I would say the field is wide open. So ask whatever you would like to ask of this duo here, because it's a pretty unique opportunity. So go for it. Just unmute yourselves, guys, and go for it. Andy, you're up, girl.
Yeah.
So I have 2 specific questions, but just to touch on a little of what you said, I found really interesting. One, I'm currently experiencing a traumatic brain injury right now from a car accident. This is my 4th one. So I may be needing your guys' help. That's for one. 2 of them are from soccer, and the last one was in 2013, and that was from a different car accident where I hit the opposite side of my head. So this time was on the left side. Every single time has been extremely different. But what I will say has been unique with this one is that I've been having severe left eye pain. To the point where, like, today I got an optic MRI with contrast, without contrast, fat saturation suppression, all that. Going through this whole process has given me such an insight because I'm a healthcare professional. So I've been on both sides of this fence, and I completely have been traumatized by the professional community, as you mentioned. I've had to advocate for myself so fiercely that it's exhausting. And I've even gotten second opinions, you know, at Thomas Jefferson and all that kind of stuff. But what's been interesting, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, I don't want to take up all the time, but my vision was like about a 1.25 my lens, like a single vision lens. Now, after 3 neuro-ophthalmologists, it went to a 0.5. It's the most bizarre thing that I've ever heard of. So my question is along the lines of like prism lens, and if you guys work with that or what your thoughts are. I just am not I'm not feeling like it's going to be really helpful, I guess I would say. I've been doing like my own kind of like eye exercises and other things that I think would like, brain stimulation, like exercise, like some of the stuff you talked about, but a lot of stuff you mentioned I don't know about. But I found through this whole process, even though many doctors are saying like, oh, concussion stuff, we know a lot more now, the most I've been given is an impact test. And I'm just like, yeah, I feel like I haven't been progressing much over the past, since July, and it's frustrating. Because I want to go back to work and I don't feel confident to do that.
Right.
So that's kind of like the basis of what I wanted to share.
Right. So mainly, it's not uncommon for us to see children who are really, really good at football, meaning soccer, and have suffered micro injuries throughout their career, being 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and be good students at freshmen in high school. And by the time they're senior year, they're wearing hoodies, they're blocking out, they don't know why they're depressed. And when I get my hands on their head, the cranial bones are so compressed and twisted and torqued. You have over 25 cranial bones in your face. So you had a soccer ball that hits you like right in here, that's going to displace, right? I can see it hit you right in here, where your face is shaped. It's a beautiful face, but I think you can see that if you do it for a long while. You go, okay, she got hit there, and then she got hit there, and this bone over here is rotated and stuck under here like this. So because the cranial bones are soft and it's supposed to be moving, the brain has this cycle. It's supposed to expand and contract. When you get hit in the head, it stops. And the bones get displaced and they impinge on the connective tissue, the door, which impinges on the brain, which reduces blood flow, which reduces cerebral spinal fluid going down the spine, which reduces the connective tissue, the fascia getting the fluid. And then the sacrum slows down. Now the hips go out. If the hips go out, the ankles go out. So you have this whole craniosacral mechanism. So then when we sort that out in 1 or 2 visits, get it all kind of rebalanced, then we have to replug in the reflexes. Because when your brain gets hurt traumatically, 25 reflexes start going haywire. The body goes, okay, trauma, 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 trauma. And so we have to replug in the reflexes, and then we have to look at the levels. Okay, now what's left? If Mandy's having a trouble going, tracking side to side, let's check that, because that would be crawling on her belly. Oh, we're gonna have you crawl 10 times a day, 10 yards on your belly with a toe dig, and 100 days, you're gonna start tracking again. God bless you, you're done. You don't need a prism. You don't need a Band-Aid. You need to go, you know what do I need to do? The part of the brain that does this, where is that, by the way? And what can I do like a well kid? How can I replicate wellness again? And if your vision, if convergence, fusion, depth perception, going up and down, circling, going in and out is confusing, that's your hands and knees. That's creeping on your hands and knees. Those cranial nerves come out of the mesencephalon, which are ruled by the function of creeping on your hands and knees. That's how babies get to be awesome. That's how babies get depth perception. So when they stand up, they can see depth. That's how they get hand supporting reflex. So if they fall, they don't break their front teeth. We would go and we would look at your brain and we would go, okay, where are all the reflexes? Which ones are happy? Which ones are not? Get the craniosacral mechanism set. Check for hydration, because your body can be, even if you're drinking water, because it's under stress, it may not be able to succeed using that water. So we would check for all, some Chinese techniques, that's called hydration. And then we'd get you on with Dr. Kristin. She would give you a keto diet, which rolls in fat into your brain and high level carbs so you can clean. We'd take any sugar out of your diet. We would come right down to we would show you how you can help yourself be neurologically back to where you are without going again and again and again and again. And we'd write you a plan, but it is completely doable. And the first concussion made it easier for the second concussion to hurt you, then the third concussion, now the fourth concussion. Your brain has been traumatized. We have hyperbarics in our clinic. We teach parents how to do hyperbarics. Hyperbaric grows brain tissue. Hyperbaric brings down inflammation. We would say, hey, go run hyperbaric chamber for 8 weeks while we tool your brain. And so you got a 7 psi hyperbaric chamber that's bringing oxygen to your brain's going to get much happier. The inflammation is going to come down. So we're going to have a multifaceted approach that will seek to heal you. But we have to get, without the medication, without the prison glasses are just a Band-Aid. They do not, you can't go that route. Prison therapy, because you're fundamentally hurting the pons, you can't rewire that without going through the tracing. That's why mobility is the most complex function in all of human brain function. If you can't do mobility, the idea, if you don't have enough mobility, you're going to have a hard time healing your brain. So that's why kids who crawl on their belly, creep on their hands and knees, walk, come on, play a lot of sports, get off the iPads, no binky, are running around with their pants on fire, they win because you're moving. So we would take you back and we would give you you might think crawling is goofy, but it works.
Something, and I'll just be really quick if you don't mind. My hips and my ankle are really bothering me. So it's interesting you said that.
Yeah.
And lastly, just to add, like I was not a crawler as a child. My mom told me that. Yeah. I actually started walking when I was like 8 months old, but I'm really, really smart. But I struggle with organization and ADHD and sensory processing disorder, even though I'm clinical pharmacist. So it's just like, I've been learning all this over the past 7 years, and the medical community is just kind of disappointing to me right now.
Not only is it disappointing, it's responsible. Like if you're doing something and it's not working, I went to a clinic, I went to two PhD guys were down at Penn. So I get invited to this round table with these two guys from Penn, and they're talking about remediating ADHD. So I came in, I'm a little bit late, maybe 10 minutes late. I'm kind of running up from Norristown to Philadelphia through the Schuylkill Expressway. I get there hyperventilating, I sit down, it says remediating ADD, and the first sentence was, you can't be remediated, it's a chronic condition that medication will heal. I said, well, hold on, there's a whole lot of lies there. First of all, medication doesn't heal it. Number two, the brain goes by use. Number three, it's not chronic. Hold on, what are we doing? So it's crazy that if it's not working, why are we still doing it? Where's the evidence? Come on, trust me, where's the evidence? So, Amanda, you want to be Mandy 2.0 or 3.0? You just tell me where you want to be. We'll build a plan. You execute. Bring about anybody that loves you. We'll get you rolling. You'll be back rocking it sooner than you think.
I'll be any 2.0, 1.0.
But you're not afraid of hard work. You just want to make sure the work is effective.
Yeah, I want effective work, and I feel going to all the doctor's appointments is extremely exhausting and draining, and that's not beneficial to our patients. That's not what they need, because it's not making a difference. I've been told by my concussion doctor, oh, you shouldn't be working right now. Why? I need to go back to my normal activities. Like, I'm not supposed to drive. Well, I can drive now, but it was 2 months, and it caused me like a lot of sadness and stuff. So, but I want to let other people go. So I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Matt. And Kristin and everybody for having this.
Thank you, Mandy, for sharing. Carrie.
Hi, I might get emotional. This has been kind of an emotional hour for me. So I have two boys that are 11 and 12, almost 13. And I self-diagnosed both of them with different things. The older one is highly sensitive, and both with his physical sensory and emotional sensory. And the other one has dysgraphia. And I discovered probably both of them right around 6 or 7 years old. But because they're they do so well in school, it's really hard to get anybody to acknowledge that there's actual problems here. Oh, he just doesn't like to write, that kind of thing. I can't, I feel like I was gaslighted so many times at the school with my younger one. Yeah, he just doesn't, they observed him. I tried to do an IEP. So they would just dismiss it. And with the older one too, but it's resulted for both of them in behavioral. issues. So I'm seeing this connection between this underlying cause and the behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to get professionals to actually help. And the younger one was recently, I took him to a psychologist, and he said he probably has ADHD in addition to dysgraphia. So he did acknowledge the dysgraphia. But then COVID happened and he's not seeing patients anymore. But I'm not sure that that's even the right route to go now. I'm thinking about, I don't even know where to start. Like, be reading books or watching videos or,
We have a pathway for you. See, I don't think, all things being equal, Kirk, I don't really think kids have psychological problems. I think they have real ones. I don't think they make up that they can't read. I don't think they wake up that they can't write, and they get the teacher's face looking at them like, you're an idiot. Why can't you write a paragraph on how your summer went? Well, because I can tell you, but by the time I put that pencil in my hand, manual function, cortical opposition down to here, my cortex blows out. Okay, a circuit goes out in my brain. It could be laterality. It could be my grip. Like Carrie, if you make a fist and put it up to the screen. Can you do that for me? Good, perfect. Some kids do this. Kristin, some kids do this. This is a medulla oblongata reflex in the manual pathway. You may find when you ask your son to make a fist with his right hand, he may do this, he may do this, he may go like that. If your reflex in your manual pathway is out, it's going to shoot your brain backwards. You may not get organized. You may be able to dictate, but this is a motor pathway. So why are you torturing this kid? Why don't you figure out why the brain's not happy instead of making his fault and making a distraction? No, he's got an injury in his cortex, which is probably starting in his basal ganglia. Can we please go back and sort that out and not hammer the kid? Let him tell me what he has to say. I'll dictate it, and then he can copy it. You can be a great writer because all you have to do is think. And so when we look at the kids, we try to pinpoint the logical neurological explanation behind where the injury lies. And we teach you, Carrie, what you could do to help these kids at home. It doesn't take 1,000 hours a day. It's just like you might replace this with this, or you might replace this with that over here. But the point is, how do we get to a yes with these two boys? How do we make them be able to stand on your shoulders? Because all parents want their kids. Look, you don't care about anybody else's kid, but you want your kids to be better than you. I mean, don't we? Like, I don't want my kid to be less than me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. That's in my genetic code. I don't know. Can't figure it out. But we have a plan. We have a program that teaches parents what we're looking at and then how to do stuff to grow pathways that will lead to the ability to be independently functioning socially, emotionally, writing, reading, arithmetic, laterality, wake up in the morning, bright-eyed, be able to regulate yourself, go to bed, eat the right foods, know what's going on, socially connect with my vision. Like, oh, she smiled at me, that means this. Oh, she's frowning at me, that means this. Catching up, all the social cues come from your sense of smell. But if you've been hit in the head in the limbic part of your brain by a soccer ball or a long labor, or you came out like a flathead like this, and nobody ever rebalanced you, you're going to have tightness in your temporal lobes. You're going to have trouble with language. You have trouble with hearing. You're hypersensitive to hearing. Like, okay, I need to be quiet. Please be quiet. And you're going to have all kinds of struggles. And so I'm going to adapt. And you become, Carrie, the most adaptive human being in the whole planet. Because now you're going to adapt to two neurologically disorganized kids to help succeed. So your brain has to be sharper to accommodate your neurological dysfunction. You're like, okay, I'm getting tired. Plus, if it worked, you'd be happy, but it's not. And you're like, okay, if I don't change the trajectory of this in the next 3 or 4 years, where am I going to be? Are they going to fall behind? And most kids fall behind. They're like 2 years old. They all look the same. And all of a sudden, there's this separation. And you think they're going to catch up. Maybe they'll catch up. But nobody's giving you an inside out, bottom up. So that's what we do. I mean, I don't do a whole lot of other things. Like I have people to help me with my books, and people to help me fix my house, and people to help me fix my car. But this is what we do, is healing the brain and putting you in the driver's seat, and I'll be your GPS. Carol will be your GPS. Kristin will be your GPS. And it's a happy place, you know. It's a happy place because at least you have, like, okay, I just measured my child's brain. I know the exact degree of functionality he has. He doesn't have dyspraxia, doesn't have ADD, ADHD, doesn't have obsessive compulsive disorder. He doesn't have laziness. He's not, motivation comes from calling on your belly. Internal motivation to get up, look sharp, ride a bike, like, pop a wheelie or hit a baseball or become what you want to become. That comes from the lower levels of the brain. You cannot motivate kids forever. You have to figure out, how did God make this thing? The limbic brain and your pons, your reticular formation, are responsible to give you the internal desire to goal set and finish your goal. If you're jumping from subject to subject, you're all over the place. You can be highly intelligent and be completely disorganized. Intelligence and brain injury have no correlation. None. Intelligence and ability to express that brain injury, huge correlation. How do you close that gap? Carol does it on the sensory part. She's a sensory whiz. She looks at all the sensory pathways and all the writing pathways and the language pathways and says, okay, here's what we need to do. I use the motor pathway because I see the motor pathway as the hard drive of the brain. That the medulla, the pons, and membrane are the hard drive. If I get the hard drive happy, I hand it to Carol, and Carol does the cortical stuff. We move in and out of the brain according to where the brain needs us to be at that moment in time. We don't try to hammer it. We try to negotiate and heal and maneuver. But our eyes are wide open. Okay, we're here now, but we want to be over there. So we have a plan. And the kids buy in because the parents are, they know what they're doing. And you can bring in anybody you want as long as you're on the same team. So I feel your pain. I can see it. That you want to be like helping your boys, and school systems not getting any smarter anytime soon. And they're just trying to push the kid through. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, are we measuring this? I mean, you're doing this in school, but are we measuring the results to justify what we just did? Because if it's not working, shouldn't we change what we're doing? No. They just lower the measuring stick. So here, look at that here. They just keep lowering the expectations so that any result you get meets their expectations so they can qualify. Not their fault. You know what? They've never been trained. You might need to just look at it another way. So, yeah, being informed is important. And the Grove is all about informing. And our 3-day class we now have online. Back in October, we decided we were going to put our 3-day class online in chapters. And we were going to make it available to anybody in the world who wanted it at basically 65% of the price that they had to pay when they came to Philadelphia, minus the airfare and the hotels and leaving home and finding somebody for their kids. And has all PowerPoint presentations and all that kind of other stuff. And we wanted to just give it to a family and then the family can use it and show it to grandmother, grandfather, Uncle Jim, anybody that loves their child, so it could be perpetually in use. And so we decided to put that together, and it costs a little bit of coin to do all that stuff, as you know. You got to put some cash into any investment, and you got to, hope that it's for the greater good, which it is. It's what we wanted to do. We figured we'll find the money as we move. You move forward, and you find resources to show up to help you. But thank God, because here we go, we were filming it in South Africa. Kristin, myself, Carol, my team, we were in South Africa, and we were just finishing up a 3-day parent training conference with a professional crew when COVID came hammering down on the earth and really shut down our ability to do anything live. So we've spent our time putting it out online, and we have this course online for people to take now that Kristin took in Mexico. We flew to Mexico while we're teaching down there. And it's proved to be a way to really help people get mastery of understanding what they can do. And get fathers and mothers in alignment is one of our deals, because mothers are usually ahead, doing reconnaissance and figuring out. And the fathers sometimes are just, watching the whole thing happen. And they can, for whatever particular reason, either it's themselves not feeling qualified or distant because of the cultural way in which. But when you get the father and the mother aligned purposely together, it seems to be like amazing. It's amazing. So when fathers and mothers come together, so one of our purposes was fathers sometimes can't come, but if mother and father can take this parent training that we have all aligned together, they can come into alignment, and it really helps heal the family. You know, they can start working together on the kids. They can start having a different way of looking at how the child's expressing, and not get upset with them. Like, how come you didn't finish your homework? What do you mean? You studied all night. You still got a date? What was going on in your head? How come you can't finish your room? I told you an hour ago to finish your room, and it's still a train wreck. What are you doing in your room? How come I can't trust you with money? You waste money all the time. Can you believe what you just said to that person? All these little things that are just flying out of my mouth as an uninformed father could devastate a young person or a child who doesn't have the foggiest idea of what just happened and can't get himself out of the way. And so he feels sad that his daddy is constantly looking angry and frustrated at him. So when we're working with the family, we have to help the trauma, not only with the child, but the father has the trauma, the mother has the trauma, the family has the trauma, the brothers and sisters are traumatized by looking at their brother who's paralyzed, deaf, blind, and having seizures with a tube and a tray. How do I help my brother? I feel lonely in this house. Nobody's talking. So Carol took a class on infant parent mental health, and our whole objective is to surround the family with the kind of emotional support so that they can stand up on their kidneys and move through this existential experience with grace and with wisdom and with kindness and love and patience, but being fully informed about what's going on with the brain. So that's kind of the mix that we bring to the table, and yeah. So it's great to see victories. It turns out this little dinky little function of crawling on your belly is one of the most important functions you can do as a human being to wire your brain so you can have a good core and you can have good breathing. You can sleep at night. You can go to bed at night without going. You can calm your brain down. You can wake up. You can focus. You can concentrate. You're right. Oh my God, sexual regulation is all related to crawling on your belly. How many young guys are struggling with that whole thing?
Or old guys.
Well, and struggling, like, why? I have no regulation, any pathway whatsoever. I just do what I'm going to do, and I blame everything else. Like, wow. So we have the yeah. That's what we kind of do. We kind of look at the whole thing, and we don't judge. We evaluate, and then we build a brain back with people who want to work with the child.
Jerry just indicated to me that she wanted to speak. Jerry, you want to unmute yourself?
But yeah, we've been doing this for like 5 years, and it is like this bumpy road sometimes. But when we look at where we started and where we are now, it is like a world of difference. It really is. We're in a little bit of a bumpy spot with my son, but when we first started Family Hope Center, it was very rocky. And we had nobody to help us. Doctors were like, too bad, he's your son, you're gonna have to deal with it. We can give him antipsychotics, you can put him in a home, whatever, but we really, it's your son, deal with it, kind of thing. And so when we found the Family Hope Center, it was just like this whole like weight lifted off our shoulders. And even though we're having a bit of a rough time now, for various reasons, we have our team. I don't feel like we're alone. I can contact our team, and they're right there with so many ideas, and we don't feel alone. We're like, okay, let's call in our team and get the help we need. And it's been life-changing. I mean, I was there today, and we got a whole new plan for my daughter, and I feel like I'm ready to go now. We're ready to get moving. She didn't leave there feeling that way, but she will be better. Yeah. It's an exhausting day. We're taking in so much information, but it's good information. And overall it was a peaceful day, and was just, I feel like I got recharged and we're ready to go again. So I don't feel like we're doing it alone. And I feel like I know the team listens to what I have to say, and believe what I say and they understand what I say. Where before I felt like nobody even listened. Like they didn't, I was always just told, oh, it's in your head, you know, because I thought even when my son was 2 years old, I said, there's something wrong with his digestive system. I know it. No, he's fine. He's fine. We went to GI doctors and everything. He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. And it turns out he wasn't fine. And so thankfully we have our team who listens to us and actually helps us. And so I appreciate you all. I thank you.
Thank you. So just to bring a little clarity on the little rough ending, I actually pressured Jerry's daughter to have a rough ending to the day, because she had told me that her daughter does not like it if she can't turn lights off. So I turned a light off and she wanted to turn it on and back off again. And I said, you can do the next one. And that's one of the things I think that Matthew and I are not afraid. We're not afraid to jump right into the challenge with the parent. And we actually want to see those challenges and see if we can see when a child's going through that, can we change things? Can we shift things? If we put a little pressure on, what's going to happen? Because children are putting pressure on the parents all the time. And neurologically, when they're in a safe place with their parents, the parents are going to see the worst of the worst often. And, you know, we often do as the parents, we see the most challenging things, right? Because that's where our children feel safe. So when we can step into that place along with the parents, we can be more supportive. So my goal was not to upset your daughter, but to see, okay, what's it really like for Jerry on a daily basis when this happens regularly? And what can I get a little insight here to help and support this? And if we can try a couple of new things on the way out the door, it'll go better. And I'll also, nothing else I can support you through that.
It appears like a quirky thing that a kid does, and that's just his personality. It comes from the reticular formation and the limbic brain miscommunicating through some wiring. And when you organize that and then get a strategy to move through that, but you understand the brain, you don't have to pound the kid for being quirky. You say, okay, I can see where the neurology is on this, the obsession, the need to have total control, the need to, or the inability to be flexible. Those are all brain things. And yes, brain dysfunction can change personalities, because you got to adapt and you got to defend yourself all day. And if you aren't disorganized, you want the environment, you want to organize your environment because you're so disorganized. But it drives everybody crazy because your organization isn't getting you to a final yes. So we have to step in, and you don't like that. So we have to coach the child without blowing them up. And that can take, it take a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. But it's good to see the quirks, which are all neurologically based, and then help, like, okay, how do we both change the behavior but change the brain at the same time without dismissing one or the other. And always, we don't think mothers ever lie to us. We don't think mothers make stuff up. We think they're exactly what they say must be true, because they would rather paint a rosier picture. Sometimes they kind of say something that's not as bad as that's not as bad as it really is, but like they try to make it even. So when they actually tell us something, we totally like, okay, well that must be at least. And then we start digging and we evaluate together. So we evaluate the children together with the parents. It takes us about 4 hours. We want to see everything, every part of the brain, every chunk of function. We want to measure it. We got to collaborate. We ask the parents, does this trying to make sense to you? They always go, mm-hmm. Okay. Based on that, then we make a plan. So it was really nice to make a plan for your daughter.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And you know what, Carol, on the way, when we got out to the car, I said to Isabella, I said, did she just say, I'm glad I got to see that? And Isabella said, yep. But
it's true. It's true.
I'm actually glad you got to see it too. So
yes,
you knew exactly what we were talking about.
Exactly. Because we had a really nice little session before that where I really worked to play. We played together. And I took some control, and she handled it beautifully. So we know that she can. And we're all on that continuum. Like we all have these little things that we like, and we like to have something lined up in a certain way, or we like to organize our things, or maybe we don't organize our things. And, you know, some of us are more disorganized. Some of us are very particular in the way we like things. And it's a matter of balance. And if we can manage to say, okay, yeah, we really like this thing, but we can leave it. We can walk out and leave it. We're in a hurry to be at a meeting or be somewhere sometime. We can leave a little bit of a mess behind. We don't have to leave the house exactly organized with everything lined up right. We can come back and do it later. If we can't do that, then it's a little bit too extreme. And the children that we see are all somewhere on that continuum. And some have challenges like she has, but others, we see some children who are way more extreme. You know, where I know of young parents who in the last year I've been coaching, who their child doesn't want to take the dishes off the table. All day long, they have to leave dirty dishes on the table, and they can't clean their dishes until the end of the day, and the child's in bed, and they have to do these things in secret, or the child has to go out for a walk with another parent and in order to be able to do the dishes. And then they have a tantrum when they come home because there's no dirty dishes on the table, and you're not supposed to touch my dishes. And, you know, that's pretty extreme. And that becomes, some of those things then become high.
That's intense.
That's very intense.
And you cannot keep changing the environment of the child. You got to change the brain. But
Right.
you got to be able to do that by evolution. You can't just go in and hammer the child out. And you can't do it with parents unless they understand what you're looking at, unless they buy in. You can't do that unless you're in alignment. You can't do that unless you teach them. You can't teach them unless you have the right information.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it all goes all together. But unless Jerry knew why, where, and how, and we could measure it, she could be encouraged by the growth, and she could measure it. She's not going to be motivated to get up the next day and say, if I put another 6 months into it, my child's going to be closer to being independent. Yep. If she runs into a roadblock, we stop, pause, we recalibrate. You know, course corrections are all part of healing. Right? We all know course corrections are all part of healing. Mm-hmm. It's never a direct pathway. We wish that Jesus it was, but it's not. And again, as Kristin said, having as many tools to use when you need to use them, it's just experience. We have 40 years of experience, 10,000 children. Shinichi Suzuki said, I love this quote. He goes, look, you can have all the knowledge in the world, and 10,000 times later, you have skill. It takes time to go from here to here. And even though we always want to fast forward how we get there, you know, we're smarter now than we were 20 years ago. And it's aggravating that we don't know what we knew, you know, but at least the kids are getting well faster. And that's the whole, and adults, we have 22-year-olds, we have 35-year-olds, we have 40-year-olds, doesn't matter, brain goes by use. Yeah, it has the capacity to always change in relationship to its environment based on stimulation.
So I'm curious, is anyone surprised by that notion that the brain can heal at any age? Because it kind of flies in the face of what we all are taught, I think. And for those of you who have a brain healing project that needs to go next level, and you want to use the information that we share, then you should buy the whole course and take it. It's a screaming deal, and it's life-changing. It's a paradigm that you will not have heard before, probably, even if you've heard about neuroplasticity and you know the brain can heal. It's a paradigm that unfortunately the world doesn't know about yet. So our goal is to get it out there so the world knows about it, because every brain needs this information.
Yeah, so what we do with patients who have Alzheimer's or, you know, people with dementia who they come into the clinic and they want some help, we make sure that their large intestines, that they've had a couple of colon cleanses,
Okay.
that the liver has been cleansed,
Mm-hmm.
gallbladder has been cleansed,
Mm-hmm.
put them on a keto diet. We do some craniosacral work and some body talk, which is a form of applied kinesiology that works to balance all the different systems, chakras, meridians, houses, planets, whatever, 5 elements. And then we give them about 5 smells 5 to 6 times a day. And we stimulate the olfactory pathway, which stimulates the amygdala, which goes through the hippocampus and through the mammillary bodies and basically programs 50% of the brain, because all Alzheimer's patients can't smell any longer. And so when you lose your sense of smell, it means that your olfactory pathway is basically blind. And then your amygdala doesn't get happy. And if you're not stimulating the amygdala through the olfactory pathway, which incidentally doesn't have a number to it because it's so central. It's zero, ground zero of the whole human system. That then the hippocampus doesn't get happy. And the hippocampus doesn't get stimulated, you lose your short-term memory. Therefore, the only thing you have is long-term memory. Dementia just means, oh, I have Alzheimer's, but it's affected the front part of my brain. So now my morals are out. I'm cursing, I'm swearing, I'm doing things I never would have dreamed of doing. So we see Alzheimer's and dementia is almost in the same continuum, except it went to the front part of the brain. So the limbic brain has this big cable that goes straight to the front part of the brain for helping me with executive function, getting on with my brothers and sisters, knowing the difference between hanging out with women and hanging out with guys, and being able to move in and out of all these social matrices that I belong to. You know, my church group or my baseball group or my golf team or all the different matrices that we live in, the limbic brain has to adjust and change. But if I'm not being stimulated to the sense of smell, the sense of smell goes down because my sensory pathways always decreases as I get older unless I stimulate them. Unless I read a lot, do ballroom dancing, do qigong, do walking, do good food, I'm going to diminish my sensory pathways. And the first one that usually goes is my olfactory pathway, because most of the time it's trash, like cleaning my house with products like Clorox. This pathway gets blown up by all kinds of stuff, and all of a sudden I start losing my memory. I'm 57 years old, and I'm like, or I'm 62, or I'm 71. And so we've been able to really help a lot of people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's regrow chunks of brain, but they need somebody around them to make sure that they steady, because they have to take the sugar and the alcohol and the candy and the ice cream and the carbohydrates out of their diet, because that blows up a good brain. The pancreas, if it's got too many glucose, causes confusion in the frontal part of the brain. So Chinese medicine says, you gotta get the earth element under control. Which no more sugars, only above ground vegetables, that's it, and protein and keto. So when you balance all that, you can really help yourself really be assured, not just manifest like the idea, I'm not gonna get Alzheimer's because I'm a healthy person. Well, you may have to stimulate your sense of smell. The olfactory program, we use all the different smells like reading. It's like listening to different styles of music. We use the full range of like bacon and onions and carrots and lamb and coffee. Identify it, make it sentences, make a memory, put it down, change them out every 5 days, and become like a sommelier. Oh, this Cabernet, this must be have a little oak in it and a little bit of pear and cinnamon. Oh, you know, the more your nose smells, the more articulate it is, the better your memory is going to be. You can be hypersensitive to smells, and it limits your diet. And if it limits your diet, then it limits the chemicals, which we know that 50% of the neurochemicals are made in your large intestines. So if you limit your diet, you're going to limit the neurochemicals that are going to basically go back and feed your brain. So you slowly starve over time. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Your diet, because your sense of smell is blowing you up. You won't eat meat, or you won't eat this, you won't eat that. Not that meat, you could be a vegan, I don't, whatever you want to do, as long as you get the 21 essential amino acids and you get enough other stuff that Kristin's saying that. But we have kids who will only eat 3 foods. And a year later, they're eating 10. And a year later, they're eating 18 and 19. A year after that, they're eating a full meal. 2 years later, when they were 9 years old and heading downhill and having a stroke at lunchtime, not eating, throwing the food across the room, saying, I'm not going to do this. I mean, I just, because it's disgusting it blows them up. Wow. Mother's wearing cologne, father's wearing aftershave, the whole house is just a chemical bomb in the kids' heads and an explosion. So we have to really look at these hypersensitivities and go like, whoa, we can't change the environment. We have to change the environment, but can we change the brain simultaneously? So when your kids are hyper, they could be hyper in their ears. They're always like distracted. They could be hyper in their clothes where they don't like certain clothes, and it's like, they don't like being hugged, or they overhug, you know, or you say something to them and they take it personal, and you were just trying to tease them and take it personal. You go, oh my God, I got to really watch my tone of voice with this kid. He's easily distracted. I got to watch my tone of voice. He doesn't like clothes. Certain foods blow him up. I can't wear cologne. God forbid I have an essential smell in the house like bergamot. He'll go crazy. I can't do that. So then we accommodate, and what we were saying is that you can go and you can heal that part of the brain with a plan, but you got to know, well, which one's hyper, which one's not, because you got to make sure that you come at different strategies. Carol gives the strategies for all the sensory pathways, and she blends them together so that they're cohesive and in alignment with the child's overall situation at that time. And then you go home and execute, and she changes it as you improve, like Jerry's children do. We map it, and then we deliver it. She executes it, and we keep on top of it because we want their kids to be perfect. Well, capable. We're always happy about kids being capable. The more capable you are, the more happy you become. People say the program's hard. I think it's awesome. I think hard is dealing and managing the problem every day. That, to me, is hard work, because you don't know whether you're doing a good job or not. You don't know if you're going to get to a yes by the time the kid's 21, unless you know how to measure it, right? So I always like to flip and say, look, it was harder when I didn't know what I was doing. And by the way, I was working with kids way before I had hurt kids. I was working with kids 3 or 4 years before I had, 5 years before I had a hurt child. So it wasn't like I had a hurt child and decided to do this. I was already in the hunt and had a hurt child. So I saw what I saw. The day I saw it was like day one. So I didn't go through the grief as much as everybody else did, because I had a plan to execute. Once the brain went back from healing, when inflammation went down, Carol and I worked together. So I didn't have as much darkness as a lot of people have. I had darkness, sadness, grief. We got through grief by doing something and seeing change. But there's some people who are grieving all day because the kids are still hurting. So yeah.
Well, we have come to the top of our time limit, and I'm just so grateful for everyone who showed up tonight and participated and asked questions and held space and listened. And Matt and Carol, thank you so much for your time and for what you do. And this, you guys can't see this, but these guys work from dawn to dusk and then some. So they're in the trenches with hurt kids and with hurt families and making hugely positive impact in the world. So I'm just really grateful for your time tonight, because I know it's an end of a long day. So thank you.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be with you. And we figured it out. We were doing all kinds of calls, and we had to do this. So we worked it out that we're going to do it. And we love what you're doing. We love the concept. We love bringing people in the hunt, in a room together, to butsa on how we can help each other and how we can bring new ideas to healing and be no nonsense about it and wise about it and loving and kind. So it's really a pleasure for you to do this and for us to kind of hang out in your grove. And
we're all in it together.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healing Grove podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to deepen your experience further, consider grabbing a copy of the Healing Grove Playbook. With journal prompts for this podcast and 41 others, it's the perfect place to record your learnings, keep track of the tools you explore, and reflect on your own experience. Finally, it's important to mention that even though I am a doctor, nothing you hear on this podcast, whether from myself or my guests, constitutes medical advice. Any intervention you try should always be discussed with and supervised by a trusted member of your own healing team. Thanks for listening, and see you next time in the Healing Grove.